Simon, do you feel safe in Helsinki?
Man, is this really how we're going to start this?
Just for the context, we've tried to record this podcast before. I do remember the constant sirens in London that were going on as we were recording.
It wasn't constant. It was only just every time you trolled me about how dangerous London is, and I'd explain how my kids walk to school. I've never felt unsafe. Every time I'd answer the question, some siren would go off or a blue flashing light. But honestly, the only time I felt unsafe in London is when I'm hanging out with you. So I think it's more a Mishka problem than a London problem.
Okay, so it's my fault.
When you're not there, London's perfectly safe.
Well, actually, I want to jump in right into the Space Ape topic. So Space Ape was quite a company. 13-year ride for you. Can you talk about how did it all start? Like, you had a team at Playfish, and then you departed Playfish, and you went out to start Space Ape.
I was a bit of a passenger in the Playfish story. I was at Skype prior, and Skype was doing really well, but I wanted to get into mobile, and I wasn't going to get the opportunities at Skype, or Skype was not going to be aggressive enough for me, and so I saw gaming as my entry into mobile. So I joined Playfish just after they'd been acquired by EA. Like, I've been into games, but like I wasn't a big gamer, but that was the entry point, because I figured they're number one, number two on the Facebook, number two at the time, I think. And they're going to need to get into mobile. I'm going to learn games, and that was going to be it. Yeah, you can't take any credit for the Playfish success, but what happened
or failure.
Yeah, I mean, EA acquired the company, and then a few years later, shut it down. But in in the process, they did some cool stuff, and when it became kind of clear that the trajectory that the business was on, a bunch of us wanted to get into mobile. That was really what we wanted to do. And there was just an opportunity to all leave at the same time. And so in hindsight, I didn't really fully appreciate how lucky I was to be in the right place at the right time, because like hiring the first 10 employees is like the hardest thing. Like, everything's hard, but that's almost impossible. And we were really lucky to be able to start with, I think it was 12 people, and only one of whom we hadn't worked with before. So we were able to raise money almost exclusively off the back of the fact we had a complete team.
Yeah.
And we had a good story and had a crazy idea, but it was the team in the end that was the value.
That is the best timing, when a really good company is hitting a decline, and the teams that got the company to the top position, and even an exit like Playfish, are starting to think to start their new. And maybe those teams were not the founding team, so they're very hungry. They've seen what the success looks like. They've been through it, and now they want to replicate and do it themselves in a small team. So that was essentially the start of Playfish.
Yeah,
Space Ape.
Totally. I think my one twist to that is the company needs to die fast. Because like, if a company gets big and like slowly declines over a period, you don't have that kind of class of 2012 leaving and sticking together. You have kind of people drip off.
Yes.
And it's harder. So like when you look at the classic kind of alumni networks, the most successful ones are from companies that like got really big really quickly and then failed really quickly. And that, in hindsight, I just was in the right place at the right time with that.
Launchpad. Yeah. Awesome. So before we start talking about Space Ape, the football game, the Samurai Siege, the Rival Kingdoms, the Transformers, I want to hear, how was the fundraising back then? 2012. Fundraising 2012 for mobile, pre-Clash of Clans.
The people who were close to the companies that were doing interesting stuff knew it was coming. There were demos of Hade floating around. But I remember it feeling hard at the time. But when I see people fundraising now, I realize actually we had a good run. We had my co-founder was entrepreneur in residence at Excel. John.
That's great.
I had some good connections, and the Playfish founders were backing us as well. So we had like a real like red carpet into it. There was some stressful points, but I never remember feeling any existential threat. We were making offers to people and they were rolling off. I was buying computers on my credit card, and before we had a signed term sheet, because I never really had any doubt. And I think I was somewhat delusional because there were like 100 things that could have gone wrong. At the time, it felt like it was so naive. It didn't really feel that stressful. Fundraising now, very different.
You tried to do a funding round in 2025. How would you compare those two?
In the game of growth, everyone is looking for that power-up. Vibes is exactly that. It's built by industry people, so they actually get the challenges you're dealing with. As a result, they become the fastest growing gamified rewards platform out there. And the results are kind of nuts. With their AI-powered targeting, you're not just buying installs, you're bringing in the right players. And now they've got this new ROAS optimization engine, so your campaigns basically level up automatically. Vibes is built different. It's designed for growth. And I guess you could say it's powered by good vibes. Check out their DOF exclusive case studies by following the link in the description. And go to vybs.co. That's vybs.co. Share your email and join the waitlist.
Certainly having a track record makes it easier. But there's also an element of like, the more you know, the kind of more problems you see. And so with the benefit of a decade of connections and experience, everyone I think in our round, I'd known for a decade. I was good friends with. It was very familiar, which then makes it hard to negotiate some of the commercial points. But that bit was easy. It was like more familiar. The heart of it was just the market perception of where things were going, and wasn't obvious there'd ever be another off-ramp for a games company. There was those kinds of, if I invest in you, how on earth am I going to get 20 times return? Because who's going to buy you? The issues we were dealing with were more macro, but we had a track record and a team that was
in a product.
And a product and revenues too. But in some ways, like, revenues kills the story a bit. Like,
pre-revenue.
You want to be pre-revenue.
You weren't pre-revenue.
Silicon Valley skits also. But yeah, no, because once you have numbers, once you have revenue, everyone wants to know how much, and it's never going to be enough. And so there's a bit of that
classic,
more rational thing made it harder to sell the dream. But we're in a category in music. This is for music games. I shouldn't presuppose everyone knows what's going on here. But like, spinning out a music game, started spinning up a music game company. And we had this nice moat with a lot of licensing relationships and a track record and existing revenues. And so that was kind of safe.
Yeah.
Which is a great story for an entrepreneur. It's great, like, for the team. It's not a sexy story for investors, because safe generally doesn't mean 20 times, 50 times return. So it was just different problems. I didn't need to establish my credibility as a founder. I didn't need to establish the credibility of the team. None of that. All of that was a given, but the bigger picture macro conditions were like
because then
problem.
You were just about to hit the massive growth curve. So let's go back again 15 years to the starting point, and we're back and forth. So stay with us. Space Ape. Football game.
Call it football.
Call it football.
The best real-time predictive sports simulating app.
Unforgettable. Samurai Siege, which was essentially Clash of Clans for Android. So you were first on Android, and Clash of Clans didn't exist on Android back then.
Yeah, I mean, it's more than that. We chose our innovation budget very intentionally. We wanted to innovate in distribution. Back then, Unity was not obvious, by the way. So we were building the thing in Unity so we can be on Android and iOS simultaneously, and actually beat Supercell to Android. But also, from a product perspective, we really wanted to laser in on the top 1% of players. So we felt like Supercell was not a knock on them. It was the right strategy for them. They were not focusing on those top high value spenders at that point. They were going very broad, as they should have. But so we saw an opportunity to just carve off that segment and tailor the game specifically for them. Big investment in content and live ops and competitions. And our catchphrase was, the clans actually clash. Because at the time, there was no clan wars, all that stuff. So we were just squarely positioning for this very narrow but high value segment. And so we put all our product innovation there, and in distribution, we're in Unity, and we had some crazy distribution plans that didn't play out, but that was the play.
Smart differentiation, to be honest.
Yes.
Most of the time people think
they just
at the winner, and they just copy it. Yeah, exactly. And then they wonder how come they can get no traction.
Yeah.
And you made, not only was it the same game, but with samurais, which is what somebody would do, but you actually had a very smart distribution innovation. Not distribution innovation, but distribution differences that made it viable. And it was like one of the few successful Clash of Clans.
Yeah, I think it was
clones.
us and IGG were like, of that generation,
Lords
I don't know,
Mobile.
50 Lords, of 50 or so Clash of Clans clones that came out.
Even Zynga did exactly your game.
Oh my God. Yeah,
remember with the
every
zombies?
week there's a new one. Yeah, and there are only two really that survived from that genre. And I think because IGG really innovated in the RPG mechanics and also like nailed China, obviously. And we made a version that really appealed to the high value like high spenders. So we got very good at monetizing.
So let's move on from Samurai Siege to Rival Kingdoms. So you really doubled down on this specific mid-core genre of build and battle. Rival Kingdoms was high quality production, broadly appealing, fantasy themes, lots of different innovations in terms of how the core product works. It really felt and played quite differently.
Why do you say broadly appealing? Just curious.
I think the theme was appealing more broadly because it just was that core fantasy theme. I don't find samurais appealing at all, for example. But they're like Vikings. It's a kind of a niche thing.
Yeah, so I think your like closet game nerd bias is coming out here, because I think the post-mortem on Rival Kingdoms, it was critically acclaimed. It was beautiful. The graphics are amazing.
Yes.
It had a lot of like really deep systems. But the theme was the problem with it, because it was this dark fantasy, sort of Dark Souls inspired theme. And when you put that against the sort of bubblegum, like highly rendered, cutesy art style, it is just more niche. And as game developers, it's really hard to comprehend, especially back then when it felt like there's unlimited people getting their first iPhone every day. And yeah, we went way too dark, way too nerdy. And so when we launched it, we had editor's choice. We had a big splash. One of my most respected gaming influencers tweeted like how beautiful it was. I was like, your tweet.
Really?
I was just sucking up to you now. But yeah, it was
beautiful.
It was beautiful. It was critically acclaimed, but it couldn't market it. And we raised a Series C off the back of it, primarily to chase the marketing and scale it. And I don't know, we spent maybe $5 million, and then we just hit the $25 CPI ceiling. And just couldn't scale the marketing. And because of theme choice.
And you solved it by launching Transformers.
So that was, so we clocked that in soft launch, but we were like pot committed at this point. Like, we weren't going to cancel the game. It was clearly going to be incremental. So we had to give it a go. But in soft launch, we crocked that this was going to be a problem. We just didn't know how big. And I think it was like initial capital. They put us in touch with Hasbro, said, hey, they want someone to make a Transformers build a battle game. We're like, thought about it for 15 seconds. Yeah.
Check.
So that's exactly what we're after. And that was actually the most successful game from that period. Like, partly because of the IP solved some problems, but by then we just got good at systems design. And so with Samurai Siege, we'd really just like copied a lot of the core mechanics and then added content managed systems where we can DJ the crowd without really thinking too much about systems design of the end game. Rival Kingdoms, we tried to design these systems and they were pretty good, but the theme held it back. With Transformers, we had then a lot of learnings from Rival Kingdoms. We knew how to meter out the content. We brought in some people from Kabam and like these other sort of LiveOps specialists who were able to look at our content life cycle and be really intentional about, putting the bots out in these events, and then 3 months later, they're in these events. And so that the whole thing came together. The problem was we weren't the publisher. So we had Hasbro taking their cut, Backflip taking their cut. So the economics of it, even though they were our most successful game, the margin of it was enough to keep us going, for sure. It was good. But, if we'd published the game ourselves, it would have been a different story.
Yeah. So during that era of Space Ape, what I remember the best is your lean live ops.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in GDC and just taking the notes as the person was talking about how you're able to launch so many new games. So what he was talking about then is like the learnings from the Playfish era was that you had so many people working on live games back in Facebook that you didn't have the resources to start new games. And that was always a challenge to load up the new games and kick it up. And then what Space Ape really perfected was having such a lean live op that live operated game like Samurai Siege had 0 engineers. It was pure EBITDA.
Once it ended that phase of its lifestyle.
Yeah, so you're able to pull out all the builders, put them on new projects while maintaining the older game by putting so many systems that allowed artists and product managers to essentially run the game without actually having engineers committed to it.
That's right.
So what my question leads to that is, first of all, was that the reason why you got acquired by Supercell? Web stores. You've seen what good looks like, but have you seen great? AppCharge is the direct-to-consumer platform backed by the likes of Supercell and built by monetization pros from Moonactive, Playtika, Huge Games, and others, people who know the difference. AppCharge powers over $500 million in transaction a year for top studios, optimizing every detail. Deeply personalized web store offers custom-made design, industry-leading monetization features, in-game payments, SDK, and more. 70% of top grossing games already have a web store, but the ones scaling fastest, they're doing it with AppCharge. Learn more at appcharge.com.
No, in a word. The LiveOps approach was, I don't know, it was the philosophy that we brought in. I don't know whether we ever like intentionally said, we're going to do it this way. It's just our instincts based on all of the previous projects we've done would be, how do we just launch a game and not drown in the tech debt and keep it fresh for players? And so we had this abstraction of content and code, which is like, I still see people not do this. It's crazy. Because if you just commit to it, it unlocks so much, because what you can have is people like the artists or recruiting players, and they might have no game experience, but they might know the player base intimately. And so they can then have a series of tools where they can make the game fresh every week. They can, in the case of Samurai Siege, you could change entire logic of the troops. Everything was content managed, which there was a scary amount of power in those tools. We took the game down every now and then if someone put a semicolon in the wrong place. But so we had to put some QA processes around it. But it just gave a lot of power to people that were technical, but they couldn't make games.
Yeah.
And that gave us a lot of flexibility. Players appreciated it, but it also provided this amazing on-ramp for people, because all of a sudden you can come in and learn a lot of the craft of game design and live ops by just jumping on these tools. And so actually some of our most seasoned product people over the years at Space Ape, they came in, they started running events, they started like using these tools and learning what worked, what didn't, and building systems in their head how to do it effectively. So we were bleeding edge at the time for that sort of thing. And when we joined Supercell in 2017, they were quite far behind on that. They're brilliant at it now, but like we were far ahead of them at the time, because we had 5 years of squeezing blood out of a stone with this stuff. And they had users, like they just made beautiful games that didn't need this kind of approach. And the pitch to them, and ultimately what resonated was they wanted to get in more categories. They wanted to do more things that were different. So when we joined them, actually, we hard pivoted away from like making build and battle games and building out our live ops and analytics, all of that stuff, and went straight into 0 to 1 game development, entering new genres, taking still a very analytical kind of like data-led approach, but like, we turned into a prototyping shop for 5 years. And so that next phase was basically we were an R&D arm, trying a lot of things, trying to make new games. And we didn't make another one of those sorts of games.
Yeah. So you dropped your expertise.
Yes. And I think people like you and others like rightfully called us out at the time. It's like, hey, in hindsight, genre mastery is a much more predictable, safer, and effective, ultimately, way to make a games business than thinking you can tackle any problem. We made 25 games in 5 years that were like seriously staffed, more than a few months development, went to soft launch, not even counting like the crazy early stage stuff. And I wish we'd made half as many, and continued a thread of making more of those sorts of games that we'd gotten quite good at. Because I think when you look at the companies that succeeded in that era, 2017 to 2021, they weren't taking these big swings trying to make billion-dollar games. They were just trying to make something that they knew how to make it good and viable, and make it better. And so we kind of squandered a bit of that expertise, I think, that I regret.
I want to just ask one question about the lean live ops. So I remember sitting in that GDC talk. I remember taking notes, and I remember being 100% in, going back to my studio and telling everybody this new gospel. Like, the way we're doing this is wrong. Space Ape figured it out. So what we're going to do is we're going to move people out of the live game and really focus on launching a bunch of new games, which led to my studio doing 4 different genres. So I've gone the same route. That's why I was giving
you
the
only did 4 though. What were you thinking? No, we were doing 9. Come on.
No, but you're just better. And so that led to my criticism by having done the same things. But the one thing that happened with the lean live ops is when we put the game on a lean live ops, so moved the team of, I think we had 12 people on it, and we moved it to 1. So built all the tools, all the systems. We tried everything to grow it. We couldn't grow it. So let's EB that the fuck out of it. So basically, as you say, bleed the stone. So the revenue on that game actually dropped significantly. The EBITDA went up, but the game eventually declined to a point where it wasn't like feasible to even have one person. Did you have that experience?
Eventually, but the short-term impact when we rolled off the feature teams to work on other stuff, the games did better because we weren't outthinking ourselves, because the people on the game were usually stepping up to a more senior role. So they were motivated. They had a very narrow set of guardrails that they could operate in. So they might have been able to swap out assets or change some game logic, but they weren't going to be able to make a new, sort of entirely new feature. Yeah. And that might have been frustrating at the time, but it focused their innovation. And often what we would see is actually the games would perform better, players would be happier, the team was more motivated. Obviously, the profitability of it increased massively. Now, you can only milk that for so long. So occasionally you need a major feature. But yeah, it actually improved the games, I think, because we weren't like psyching ourselves out all the time with big swings. Eventually, though, I think your takeaway from the GDC talk was we should move everyone off onto new stuff and not build on the foundation that we've got.
That's a wrong one.
That was obviously the wrong takeaway. And yeah, sorry.
Sorry for that.
Sorry for that. But the principle of separating your content, empowering people who are in tune with the players to DJ the crowd, that is very solid. And that's an evergreen lesson that I think a lot of studios still don't really do well, because certainly it's hard to transition into that way of thinking. But yeah, I still stand by that as being like a good approach for games. Yeah,
that makes sense. That's really smart. So essentially the key learning from that is, yes, do build all the tools that allow the team to be run in a more lean way, meaning that you can move some of the builders away and give it to a more junior team. But then the key point there is, as you transition these people, put them into a project where they can build on the past experience, the failures and the learnings from it, rather than starting from zero, because starting something new always feels much easier.
Mean, the reason teams are so attractive to like early stage investors is because you can presume that they've gone through some stuff and learnt together. And yeah, I think the same goes when you finish, like if you've made 3 build and battle games, chances are your next build and battle game is going to be more successful than your arena shooter MOBA or kart racing game.
So, okay. You unlocked builders, and that unlocked you to build in 5 different genres in 9 different genres during the 5 years, shipping 25 games. What led you to this craziness?
First of all, there was an assumption about the market that was wrong, which is at the time, there were no shooters on mobile. There were no MOBAs on mobile. There was no fishing game on mobile. There's all these categories, which if you look through the kind of archaeology of hit games the last 30 years, you're like, there's no reason why there shouldn't be an audience for this thing. So the thinking was, there's all these unexplored genres. We should go after them. And that will be a bigger opportunity than milking this genre where like Clash of Clans had this dominant position. Like, I'm not suggesting that we would ever have been a serious competitor for Clash, but what it would have done is maybe develop some skills that could be, because puzzle RPGs are big, a lot of hybrid casual 4X, a lot of these things built on skills that we were quite good at, and the market caught up. So there was a market assumption that the value is going to come from new stuff, and so therefore we leaned in. There's also Supercell is this really amazing culture of autonomy and decentralization. The company's named after this concept, and we really internalized that, and we spun up all these teams and gave people a lot of autonomy, and each of those people had like 3 resources, 1 developer or 1 artist. And as a result, good ideas just didn't get the traction, and bad ideas continued longer than they should, because when that sort of decentralized kind of incubator approach is working well, what should happen is one game team gets traction, another one's hitting a wall. The one who's hitting a wall just abandons ship and goes and jumps on the thing that's working, and no one worries about who's going to be the lead designer or who's going to do this. And just like human nature doesn't work like that. So there's this inertia to kill stuff, and everyone was under-resourced. And as a result, nothing came out of that period. And it wasn't really until we trimmed that down and said, we're going to go after music, we're going to go after arena. We made very intentional choices that these were going to go for these genres. It took a fairly serious kind of change to the culture, just focus on fewer things. And I don't know whether if we'd done that 3 years earlier, maybe we wouldn't have come up with pizza. I don't know. Like, but certainly that was like, we probably could have realized that after 10 games instead of 25.
So let me try to understand this correctly. You get acquired by Supercell because you are now able to put more resources in new games. You have the similar type of a DNA, and that you'll become like a scout of the market for Supercell, just trying different things and looking different. Okay. And then you basically double down on that culture. What it leads to is the teams become understaffed because there's so many new starts, and it takes too long for each team to ravel in their failure. So basically not moving fast enough, not getting the traction, but they're not stopping their game development because
also too, like, no one really, like, they were failing because of external reasons.
Yeah.
Too. Like, it was very legit for a developer, like, who had a good game idea that only had one artist to say, I'm failing because you're not giving me another artist.
So it takes too long for them to realize that it's failing, or
or they don't fail. They just become zombies because they can't unlock the resources.
Yeah, because there's no central decision making, because you've given autonomy, but you haven't given the resources.
I mean, this is a caricature of what was actually happening. Like we John and I were like way more interventionist in teams, and I guess the sort of the Supercell mythology. But yeah, fundamentally, that's what it was. We're doing spread too thin, took too long to kill stuff, and didn't learn anything because when a game got killed, people went on to a completely different idea instead of re-rolling as a general rule.
I'm double-clicking on this and trying to understand, because Supercell Playbook is not a secret. Everybody knows it. They publish it every year. But nevertheless, despite sharing this playbook, nobody is able to succeed like they are. And so it's very interesting to hear from you of like, you were the closest to the playbook and you attempted to follow it in a similar way. And these are the challenges that you encountered when trying to play under the same playbook.
I think the danger is like thinking of these things as a playbook. It's a philosophy. You've got to really have the right combination of people at the right time, doing the right things. And it's just tricky to align all that.
Nevertheless, Supercell had such a unique talent density where it works. Do you think your challenges were with the similar type of a talent density and as well as depth of the bench?
We had really good people, and just the entire structure of what we were doing it was a different time. The market needed different things. Launching a puzzle game, for example, now, it's not enough to just make a good game, right? You also need to align with a massive marketing budget. You need to have a corporate strategy that is acceptable, like really low margins, because you're chasing something else. And so that all needs to align, and you can't really do that in isolation. So a lot of the things we were doing just needed more. It wasn't 5 people couldn't go and do it. And if they could do it, there's no reason why a startup couldn't do it better. And so I don't think it was like a reflection of the people or the talent.
So basically the market matured to a point where there's a specialization of entire companies rather than even the game teams.
Correct.
That they're able to do certain things.
And I don't know how long Monopoly Go was in development and how much money they spent on it. But
5
it's like
years.
a lot, whatever it was. And that became the benchmark. We're making Hollywood blockbusters now. That's that. If you want to be at the top of the charts. Now, if you want to make a game that makes $50 million or $5 million, that's a different model.
What was the impact on the culture when you shifted away from this philosophy to a more structured? You said you and your co-founder got more active and you chose essentially the genres you need to focus on.
Some people didn't like it, but overwhelmingly it was more a sense of relief. Because like people want autonomy, but also sometimes they just want guardrails. It's just like, and so having like the ability to work on anything is very stressful.
No champagne?
We didn't do champagne, but we took our post-mortem seriously. But usually it was relief because by the time we intervened, it was obvious that we should intervene. Like one of my learnings from that period is like, trust my gut earlier to do harder things. But like, we didn't, it was obvious when we did it that we should consolidate around fewer things. That was not controversial.
Can I ask more about Supercell stuff?
Sure. Okay. Can't promise to answer it.
No, it's just, I'm very curious because there's this, our favorite quote, or not ours, my favorite quote is from Michael Witz from Redemption Games.
Oh, yeah.
Shout out to Michael Witz. He's done phenomenally well. So this is not like knocking anybody down. He laughs about this as well. We've talked about it. So his quote many years ago was, having an investment from Supercell is like meeting Gandalf in the dark woods and having him agree to join your quest. The odds are still against you, but it's sure great to have some magic on your side. Would you agree with this quote?
Definitely can relate to it. Like, they were a company, or they are a company that we all look up to.
Yes.
And it was a big deal. Like, we felt like we'd really arrived at that point.
Did that get into your heads?
Yeah, a little bit. Like, I think it also gave us a swagger that they chose us, and I think that certainly that is not the cause of sort of.
No, it's
ultimately what
not
happened.
a knock on Supercell either. It's on the contrary. It's like they chose you.
They chose, and they gave us a lot of autonomy, a lot of trust, a lot of financial backing, and we maybe got overconfident in our ability, well, if we can do that, then we can make a shooter. We can do this and we can do that. And definitely confidence is good. Self-delusion is very helpful at times in game development, but also can flip over. And so I think, certainly I got a little overconfident.
It does give you a lot of confidence, and it feels good. And
which is better than like being chronically insecure.
It feels like you've proven something. It's like, if they believe in me and they are the best, then I must be good.
But which is definitely better than the opposite.
Yeah.
Of course. The opposite is far worse. But being humble is also part of their culture too.
Exactly.
And that I'm sure that played a role in
just abandoning everything you were doing because you believe that whatever you do, you have the capabilities because the best in the business believe in you.
And we were good. Like, it wasn't completely unfounded.
No.
But I think that definitely was a factor.
Game devs. Here at Heroic Labs, we know that great gameplay is what players love, but integrating metagame features like challenges, progression, and rewards is crucial for retention and monetization. But coding them is a tedious and time-consuming process. That's why top studios have turned to Hero from Heroic Labs. Hero provides a complete suite of battle-tested metagame features that are quick to implement, letting you spend more time on the core gameplay experience. Ready to ship fully featured, engaging games? Check out Hero today at heroiclabs.com.
Would you consider Space Ape success or a failure?
Success to me would be if you're interviewing someone about, so what was it like to get bought by Space Ape? It was like, there's this I think it was a Mark Pincus quote. The serial entrepreneur is just code word for failed entrepreneur. I was like, I can relate to that sometimes. And so in the end, we did not make a big standalone business. It was a great result. We achieved a lot. I think generated $500 million in revenue, sold to
better than 99.5, at least 99.5 companies.
So by any objective measure, success. By the measure against this is what we set out to do in starting a company. So it wasn't the plan, right? So there's a lot of great people there. The legacy of what we created will continue both within Supercell and outside of Supercell. But at the end of the day, we did not make a game that was meaningful to Supercell commercially, which is what we were trying to do.
I'm asking this because I'm putting it into the format of success or a failure because you started another company.
Yes.
And so I'm trying to understand, was it like that you felt like you could have done so much more?
Yeah.
And that's why you started a new company.
Yeah. We started it because we saw an opportunity to take these games that we'd made under Space Ape, so BeatStar and Country Star, made under Supercell rather, and put them in an environment where they could become serious, significant businesses and spawn this sort of slate of apps and games that sort of capitalize on this momentum we had with the music industry. But along the way, we discovered a few things that made that plan creaky. And then the owl came along just at the right time. But the plan was to take those games, spin them out. Supercell was very supportive. We had a solid team. We had a very significant VC round, and we're all set to go. And then 6 months later, I'm wearing my Pittsburgh t-shirt and I'm all in here. But wasn't the plan.
All right, let's dive into NextBeat.
Sure.
You take BeatStar, big game.
Yeah.
And you take Country Star, smaller game, but better.
But better, yes. Categorically. Are you still in the country music?
Yeah.
Have you moved on? Have your tastes evolved, or are you still hitting?
I'm in that top 50.
Yeah.
Top 50. Pop. Yeah, it's actually my gym music. I love it.
Yeah.
But so you take the BeatStar, Country Star, you take a team of about 20 people.
Yeah, 25.
25 people, move into some cellar in London, Supercellar.
Basement, Basement of Dreams.
Basement of Dreams, aka Supercellar. How did that come about?
So we were able to make good games. BeatStar grossed, I don't know, a couple $100 million.
Yeah.
Chrome Valley did, I think, 50 in its first year. So like in any other scenario, these things are successful. In the context of what we were trying to achieve, though, they were not meeting the goal. So it became very obvious that we were not going to succeed in making a Supercell scale game with the structure that we had. And the teams could have a lot more impact helping Supercell scale, because I don't know how many people the revenue of Supercell was at the time, but like other
say 1.5 billion,
whatever it is, another company, any other games company with the same revenue has 10 times as many people, right? Now, that's not to say Supercell's missing a trick. They shouldn't have 10 times as many people. They could probably have more. And so they saw an opportunity to sort of like bulk up teams, to do more with the existing games, and saw a bunch of talented people who were like very closely culturally aligned, very familiar. So that was like a solution to the scaling challenge for them. But what was not obvious is, what do you do with, we'd made some good games. We had a bunch of people that were really passionate about those games.
Puzzle games, music games.
Chrome Valley, BeatStar, and Transformers. And there were some specialists in there. And that wasn't obvious that they would also be able to contribute to Supercell. So we had this sort of problem. And yeah, the idea was, we take these people that are really passionate about the music games and spin it out to a new company in partnership with Supercell. They were invested in this thing being successful. They supported the project and very, very close to everyone's heart. Spin it out, put it in a new company, and being freed of the weight of that expectations, we could do things like launch a rock and metal SKU. We could launch a wellness app that's based on music. We can do all these things that wouldn't necessarily make sense within the Supercell umbrella, Supercell brand, but that was where we should take the product. And so the thinking was, we do that. We have a separate company, recapitalize, raise some new money, reorientate our position with the music industry so they're more invested in new product development. And that was the plan. And with the Transformers game, we did a deal with our China publisher, Yoda One, for them to take it. Chrome Valley spun out as well as an independent company. And so it was kind of a nice way of solving this problem. Take it, make an independent company, and really go after that music category, leveraging the fact that we had users and licenses and all this know-how.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was the plan.
Can you talk about the business of music games? I'm especially interested in the licensing part, because it sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, it's a bit like BeatStars. If you imagine if you had an IP game, like you work with a third-party IP.
Yeah.
And
Transformers.
you had Hasbro, Netflix, Disney, World of Warcraft, and Call of Duty. And they all had to collaborate on one game and agree on the same terms. And, it's so complicated. So we'd stitch together these like really defining deals. Like no one in the history of gaming had done something like this. Like closest really would be Guitar Hero way back, but that wasn't free. That was premium,
paid,
right?
Yeah.
So we had this sort of free-to-play model. The whole industry had aligned behind. It was super complicated. It wasn't cheap. We took this road of, there's a way of doing music where you try and pay as little as possible. You get some cover band in to try and sound like the originals, or you use AI music, or there's ways of doing it that try to avoid engaging with the popular stuff. And our position, we want to partner with the music industry. We want to like build a slate that's going to need them invested in our success, because we're solving a problem for them. And so we took on all that overhead, but that overhead has challenges. So if you're like raising money or trying to sell a company and you need your publisher to agree to it, like that, now you've got some third party that you can't control that you've got to include in the mix. If you've got a third party license, often those licenses have change of control protections so that you can't just transfer the game to some scrub team that will do bad things with the IP. So there's like a lot of controls when you have these sort of IP integrations, and there's a lot of money tied up in all that. So it's just super complicated. So when we were spinning out BeatStar, we had 72 external stakeholders.
Wow.
Between the publishers and the labels and management companies, that sort of thing. We had 2 VCs and a bunch of angels in the round. We had obviously Supercell, because we needed to do it on terms that they were comfortable with. And then we had the 25 employees. So like the number of stakeholders, single points of failure in this whole setup was insane. And I was very optimistic. We were pushing forward with that. Plus, not to mention, we had to make a game. We had to like operate the live games, make new games, make new apps. So like we had all of that stuff that you also is risky. And actually like that, I was very confident on that. Like we've got at some point we should like just open source our rock and metal designs for the sequel for BeatStar. It was amazing. It solved all of the problems of BeatStar. It was like very exciting. We had a couple of big artist IPs that we were working with, and we had a really cool wellness meditation thing. So we had this like killer slate, absolutely killer slate. And it just got to the point where every week I was coming in and discovering a new problem. And
that's not related to building a game.
Nothing to build a game. That's stressful and difficult as well, but that wasn't existential to me. And so we just got to the point where like there wasn't one thing that kind of made me feel that it wasn't going to happen or was going to be difficult. But it's just every week I'd just kind of like
death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Yeah, exactly. And meanwhile, we were having these conversations with Duolingo because they have this music product. So Duolingo's famous for having language learning, obviously. But
I've heard about it.
Yeah, you heard about it. So we were having conversations with them from years ago, like just knowledge sharing about how to work with the music industry, how to think through design issues, because I had this music course in the app. And at one point, we think maybe would they invest in us? The more we talked to them, the more interesting that option became. The more paper cuts we got in like the business practicalities. It just came a point where I realized that if we didn't take their option seriously, then I'd start having team issues, right? Because like it gets to a point where like starting a company is a risk-reward balance, and it was getting riskier, and the opportunity with Duolingo was getting more concrete. And there just came a point where I thought we've got to take this seriously. We've got to at least explore it. And and then as we started exploring it, like I had this sort of checklist of reasons why it would be a bad idea. It's a single app company, hundreds of people. I'm used to like having 5 projects going at once, which gives a lot of autonomy and that sort of thing. Or it's learning. We're trying to make games, so like, can we do fun stuff? I'd kind of convinced myself that it'd be a bad idea. And then as we engaged, flew to Pittsburgh a few times, we met a lot of team, they came over, we realized that actually like that from the outside, it might seem like that, but once I got inside and really understood what they were trying to do, the mission was, how they're structured and how we'd work, it just became like a real no-brainer. When you've got a hit game or a thing that's going well, the universe seems to align and everything kind of accelerates. And sometimes just the opposite. Every week something is going, and it's feeling like you were walking through cement, and we were not accelerating. So at some point we just told the VCs we couldn't take the money. We told Supercell, we don't think this is going to work. We started engaging with the music partners, and we pivoted to chase this opportunity. And no regrets, because it's amazing. We're doing some great stuff and happy to talk about it. That was the NextBeat journey.
Stay ahead of the competition with Sensor Tower, the trusted source for mobile marketing intelligence. Whether you're tracking trends, benchmarking performance, or scouting the next big hit, Sensor Tower delivers the data that drives strategy. Dominate the charts with Sensor Tower.
What was the thesis for Duolingo to acquire NextBeat?
So they had this music course, and we had a long-standing relationship with them. Duolingo is really good at knowing when they don't know something. And so they have this program of like going and talking to people around. Like we had some meetings with some game developers yesterday where they were learning about LiveOps and a lot of knowledge sharing. So we were in that loop, like chatting every now and then and giving some feedback on how to engage with the music industry, how to think about the design. And so we had this long-standing relationship, and they'd launched the music course, and it's a really good course. It does a really good job of teaching, but they grokked that actually like it could probably benefit from having some sort of games DNA to come in and make it a bit more fun. Think about where to take it, how to engage with the music industry, get better quality music, and that kind of thing. So the thesis of the deal was talent acquisition, bring this team in, graft them onto the current music team, and then we'd bring a sort of gamey way of approaching it, which would complement the educational like stuff that they've got nailed down, and then we'd just build out the course that way. So that's what we're doing.
Is that live?
So the stuff we've been working on, not live yet. We've got some changes that will be
But music
testing.
stuff. Is music live?
The music course is live. This is music, chess, and math. The chess course went live a few months ago. That's PvP. It's doing really well. And music's been live for a while, and we're making some changes to it. And see you soon.
What does Duolingo understand about modern users that most game companies don't?
I think there's one thing that really struck me when I just went and shadowed a bunch of people there for a few days. And the relentless attention to detail for like micro optimizations was mind-blowing to me. Even at Space Ape, if someone came along and said, hey, I think this feature will make us like $5,000 a day, we go like, no, we're making 50 million a year. Why would we bother with stuff like that? Or I don't think we spend any time really optimizing our push notifications. So all those little things.
The widgets.
The widget, like the Duolingo team is just like this extremely well-oiled operational machine. And over the years, they've recognized that all these little things, like any individual thing might not be a game changer. Rarely they are, but they compound. So if you make a change now, that's just gonna compound. The next one's gonna compound. And a lot of that growth, 50 million DAU right now. Again, I think there were 10 not that long ago. And a big part of that is down to this sort of machine that they have for relentless optimization, attention to detail, and that sort of thing. So that is something that I think a lot of game developers don't really value, because for the last decade, there's been this presumption that if you're not working on the next thing, the next big feature, the next new game, then like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
right?
And we calculate ROI for individual almost tasks rather than what is the compound ROI on all these quality of life improvements.
Yeah, and that's not true of everyone, again, but it's more true than, say, in a single app company, right? And now the market's shifted to like really reward digging in on legacy IP way more than new product. And so I think that way of thinking, if you've got a 5-year-old game or a 10-year-old game, that way of thinking that Duo's really good at, I think could be, I think the games industry could learn a lot for that, for those sorts of, like, I don't think, if you're making a new game, you probably haven't got a lot to learn from Duo. Maybe you should be gamifying an app, but I think that's that relentless optimization is really impressive to see, because it was so foreign to me. Like, I couldn't imagine how it could all work. And I also couldn't imagine how a team could have autonomy within this world, because the trade-off of that is it's very, very organized, very precise. But what really flipped the whole narrative for me, like, I understood that. Like, this is really impressive, but I aspire one day to be able to do this and operate like this. But I don't see what can we do here?
Yeah.
And we sat in on this product review for the chess feature. And a couple of senior people went off and made this thing, right? And I was seeing really the first time the senior leadership team had reviewed it. And the product was pretty well baked. We weren't looking at a green lighting meeting. This was like, hey, we're going to launch this thing. What do you think? Kind of vibe. And they were talking about all the pros and cons of different ways to do PvP. And what I realized is actually, like, although there's this massive machinery that's relentlessly optimizing the core product, teams have autonomy, a lot of scope for creativity, and actually not that dissimilar to the way a game team might operate. And that was where I saw how we could fit in. So we're plugging in the music course.
Based out of London.
Shout out to London.
Shout out to London.
Safest city in the world, according to Mish Kekov. And yeah, that was what flipped it to me. Like, seeing that the company's structured in a way that features can have ownership in the way that if you're making a new game, you'd have ownership of it. And so obviously there's a lot of different processes and different ways of thinking about it. Obviously they're very mission driven. So, to the extent there's gaming elements in there, it's all in the service of getting 1 billion people learning something useful. And so that's a different way of thinking. But yeah, don't have to worry about distribution. Don't have to worry about monetization. I just need to make something that's fun. People that would thrive in this.
Yeah.
And maybe one's a bit disillusioned with having to like grind out the CPI LTV decay curves and
LTV cohorted every time, every month.
Just want to make some fun stuff. All right. In an environment where I've got no problem with the games industry at all, big user, but like, it's also doing real good, like teaching people stuff, like not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. And yeah, that's what flipped it. It was just really exciting, really smart people, really motivated. And I knew all that, but what I didn't know is that we could get like real autonomy within that machinery.
How did the team buy this?
There were a few of us that were leading the charge, and we realized it maybe a month before the team. So we had this awkward moment where like I'd seen this thing and like I just couldn't describe it. And like, yeah, this will work. Trust me, they're like us, but
American,
but different, but it's going to work. Trust me. And the team was like a bit skeptical, and there was a bit of whiplash, a bit of disappointment. But then what we did is we just stopped the line on existing projects, said, hey, let's do this task. Let's make a design, make a prototype of what we would do if we were running the music course. And so we spent a month doing that, stopping the business as usual, told the VCs we're doing it. That was like a point of no return because you can't say.
And they took it well.
They took it well. They're good for it. But they took it well, but they have a job to do. They're deploying people's money.
Yeah.
And the second you tell your VC, actually, I'm entertaining, like selling, I couldn't go to these guys and say, hey, we're thinking of selling. And by the way, if that doesn't work, then yeah, we're going to be 50x.
Yeah, you're our second best option, just so you know.
So we never like technically burnt the ships. I'm sure we could have figured something out, but like, for all intents and purposes, we did. So the team just dug into it. Said, okay, imagine if we own this thing, what would we do?
No.
And they really got into it because the process of looking at that course and trying to make it more fun and bring game mechanics into it, that's a classic problem they're used to solving. It's just instead of little characters popping in, they were like using the characters that existed. Instead of building a trophy road, you had to use the path that's already, so
saga map.
So they had the guardrails. And back to the LiveOps comment earlier, actually, when you put guardrails in, a lot of the times that takes the pressure off. You find creativity within that. And by the end of that process of doing this sort of like product test, everyone was all in, to the point where if the deal hadn't happened, it actually would have been quite hard to sort of like shift back into the NextBeat mindset. And so we just went on this journey where it just was not obvious from the outside at all that there could be a fit. Like I understand there's tremendous respect to what they've achieved and the streak thing's amazing and the numbers are all amazing, but it's very hard for a small games team to like, how would I plug into that? I bring. But yeah, by the end of the project, we saw it. They liked our take, like we missed the mark on a few things, but they were like, actually, yeah, this could work. We could give you the scope that you need to like scratch those creative issues. And then it was just a case paperwork and
due diligences and all that boring stuff.
Well, it was the due diligence. It's a talent acquisition. The due diligence is meeting the people, seeing the work, deciding that you can work with them. And which is more straightforward than reviewing 72 licensing contracts.
You mentioned the allure of moving to apps by saying that this is something that actually feels beneficial to users. I know what you mean. It's not that the games are not beneficial.
No.
Of course they are. Entertainment is beneficial in its own sense, but there's something about learning apps where it's the other part that it scratches. Like you're doing something you could consider good. Somebody's learning music, somebody's learning chess. I don't know if chess is a game, but it's about learning the language.
I think, so the big turning point for chess internally was like, yes, it was a game. And Duolingo is not in the business of making games, right? But kids who learn chess are way more likely or way more adept than learning maths and learning languages. Chess is training your brain in a way, just like music trains your brain in a certain way, that then makes it easy to learn other stuff. And so that was really the thing that flipped it from, hey, this is a game, to actually, this is a game that will help you learn stuff. And actually, like learning chess is also a skill in itself, but learning League of Legends is also a skill, but I'm not sure learning League of Legends helps you learn.
There's a causality between being a smart person and good at chess, but maybe not like good in Fortnite and good at.
Actually, no, I take that back because I think probably there's you're learning stuff playing those arena games as well. Like you're learning teamwork, you're learning strategy.
Slurs.
Slurs. You're learning you're learning how to swear and abuse people in different languages. But there's I don't know how we got onto that, but I think there's two schools of people there. There's people that are genuinely on a mission to just help the world. And the more people learning interesting things, spending more time, even if it's maybe not the best way to learn, like you teaching me how to speak Finnish or Russian is probably going to be more effective.
Yeah.
But it's not accessible because I only get to do a podcast with you every 5 years. But so we can reach a lot more people. They can be learning. And you can go all the way through to getting accredited to apply to universities and that sort of thing. And isn't much better for doing that than doom scrolling. So there's a definitely mission-driven element, but there's also a kind of like, if you're in the business of like growth, there's things you can do in this environment that you couldn't get away with in game. Like the distribution's somewhat easier, right? Because you can talk about what you're doing. There's this intrinsic motivation. The notifications, like if the barbarians started abusing you for not coming back and donating your dragons, that notification is probably going to get deprecated, but like you can get away with it when you're learning. So there's just a lot of things that are now easier because you've got this
value that you're offering
to humanity that you're bringing that you could communicate. That's not to say games are not valued, but like it's it's just a different way. And so, yeah, if you're gamifying a running app or gamifying a skill learning thing, it's just a different way of applying the same sort of foundational skill. So that's really interesting.
Okay. Games have social pressure. You need to come back or your guild will kick you out. It's different type of stuff.
And Duolingo has some of that, and maybe it should have more. There's because like I know we've got the family plan and like the streaks that I keep up with my kids.
Yeah.
That's a real motivator. If I wasn't working there, I'd probably like drop out of the habit. But my daughter's got a 1,300-day streak or 1,500-day streak.
And what?
She's doing Spanish.
Wow.
If I drop out on my friend quest with her, there'll be hell to pay.
You doing Spanish too?
No, I'm doing Portuguese, math, music, chess.
Why are you doing Portuguese?
I don't know. I just like going to
planning
to Portugal.
To move to Portugal?
I had to pick one. But yeah, I wasn't a big Duolingo user before, but my daughter was. I kind of understood it. I was on a 100-day streak when the deal closed. So I started getting serious and then.
Let's talk a little bit about you, like in the end, like what's the price of being a founder in terms of economical and emotional price? What do you conceive it to be?
I don't know. Like in order to figure out what that price is, I need to be able to imagine an alternative reality. So like the difference between
getting
now
paid and not getting paid. Let's say your beginning years of Space Ape.
Yeah, I didn't draw a salary for 4 or 5 years.
That's a price.
We had a house, so we like luckily got in and bought a house in the mid 2000s, and so I was able to sell that, and we lived off the profits of that. Yeah, so and then when we sort of joined Supercell, I started to get a salary. But even then, 5 or 6 years in, I probably wouldn't have had that much more in my bank account than if I'd continued on the kind of climbing the big corporation. But it's certainly like the later transactions and everything was more impactful. But I just can't. People like ask me all the time, I want to start a company and I'm thinking about it. What do you think? And my answer is always, if you're asking that question, you already know the answer. The only time you should possibly ever start a company was when you're so obsessed about it that you're unemployable. Because you like spend your whole time just like thinking about this other thing and your employer won't let you do it and you've just got to do it. And if you don't have that level of obsession, it's not going to work. And so I was definitely that camp. So like the idea of maybe not doing that, I can't even comprehend it because I just had to do it and there was no option. But yeah, it's very taxing. I don't know, for like
it's
2 or 3 periods where like really like breakdown, burnout phases. And I don't think I would have got that if it was a regular job, but maybe, I don't know.
Really?
But yeah, possibly.
Tell me about having a job now.
Like a lot of people think about going from this sort of entrepreneurial roller coaster to steady job as being, that's more relaxing. Now you can put your feet up. And I don't know if I feel that at all. I think it's a different kind of stress because obviously we've come in with high expectations. Most of the people that came in with me, I've worked with for 7-10 years. So I care deeply about that. I care deeply about making sure we're successful. I'm bought into the Duo mission, everything. So it's a different kind of stress. But the stress of having to convince someone to bail us out because we need money next week, that's gone. So that's different. But
so just stress about execution.
Yeah, it's just different. So yeah, I don't think there's a price to the entrepreneurial thing because I can't imagine I would have ever done anything else because I was basically
because you just don't think about it. That's very Aussie of you.
Using clunky payment systems in your game, that's like fighting a boss with a wooden sword. App Charge gives you the power up you need: seamless in-app purchases, global payments, and analytics that don't require a PhD. Monetize smarter, not harder. App Charge, because your game deserves better loot.
In today's hyper-competitive digital landscape, understanding your app's journey from discovery to download isn't just insightful.
Yeah. I don't like the sort of alternative history thinking.
You kind of carefree.
I wouldn't say that.
I mean,
yeah. But I was going to say something.
Now, carefree is an absolutely wrong way to put it. You're more like, you just don't spend time thinking about the alternative reality.
Yeah, and
it is what it is.
And that's helpful because I think a lot of people do.
Yeah.
They worry, what if we'd done this and what if this happened? And
make the right choice and you keep asking yourself that for 4 years straight. That's kind of...
And I guess you can get into that loop as an employee as well. Should I have gone to that for that promotion? Should I have switched jobs? Someone else has caused this thing that's holding you back. So all of those things could exist in either. But yeah, definitely there's less existential kind of dread as an employee, for sure.
How do you see founders nor other founders operate in a corporate giant?
So it doesn't always work, for sure.
Why it doesn't work?
I don't know whether I can generalize, but like some examples of where it doesn't work is I can just make things happen as a founder. You know, I can tell you to do something.
Yeah.
I can, and when you're
pivot the company, start 5
change
new
everything.
genre projects.
And now I have one direct report now, so I can't even tell the people in the music team really what to do. I need to influence. We've got 4 or 5 different departments around the company that have to interface with, so you got to build relationships with that. So it's just a different game. And some people can hide behind that. I no longer have the final say on what can happen. So there's an adjustment like that. There's another adjustment, especially if they're like strict earnouts, which are very, like I've been through a couple of companies that had strict earnout targets, and that can get really toxic because if you need something from the company that bought you and you're failing to hit those targets, it's just so easy to just then switch into like, well, they're the enemy. They're holding me back. They're idiots.
They're not giving me my money.
They're not giving me my money. They're not letting me make them money.
They're making me fail so that they don't have to give me money.
Yeah, so that's a trope I see a lot. And then there's also just burnout. Sometimes getting into a company and doing exits, like you're just limping across the start line, really. And a lot of people think it's the finish line.
Yeah.
And it's done. I can put my feet up. And then
finally.
And then when they have to earn a new reputation with a bunch of people they don't know, it's like, have you started a company? What have you done? Having seen a few different environments, having a low ego, realizing that we did actually get lucky in like a long steps of the way, and just being grateful for being there is like the key. And that's like really hard to do for a lot of founders. Yeah. I don't know how I got onto that rant.
That was a good rant. Is Duolingo founder-led?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it visible in the company?
It's extremely visible. Okay. So Luis, the CEO, is very, very across every detail. Severan's still very influential as well. And a lot of people in the leadership team have been there before it got big. And so it's extremely founder-led. And I love that because the way of operating I can relate to. So for me, it was a real feature. I think for some people, they don't like that way of working. And so I think it means to be effective in a founder-controlled company where the leadership are like all across all the details. You've got to attract a certain type of person who sees that that's why it's success, leans into it. And again, more junior versions of me definitely would have railed against it. And
but now you're 35 and you're definitely
35. No, it's a big reason why it's successful. They're also very self-aware, very, very good. So yeah, I really like it. But also the people around him, like they have the ability to channel what's going on and they put a lot of effort into getting alignment on things, but they're all extremely talented. It's a very well-oiled machine. It was a dream. But yeah, I can't imagine working for a company that's not founder-led.
So you went from being acquired by one industry-defining company to being acquired by another industry-defining company.
Yeah, I guess.
Last question. By all the metrics, you're very successful as a founder. How have you been able to not let the success slow you down?
Not let the success slow me down. I don't know. How do I answer that question? What's the right answer?
I don't know. What I mean by that, I don't want it to be like...
what have other people said?
Ego. The bad way to answer this question is to make it all about yourself, about the ego. But you're not that type of a person. What I'm trying to get into it, and what I mean by slowing down is people feel like they've crossed the finish line and they're like, okay, now I don't have to do anything. Now I can do only the things that interest me. I'm going to be, hobby working or whatever. And it feels like the founders who do that fill their life with a lot of things that are unhealthy.
Sure.
And when I meet you now, whether I met you like year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you're always the same person. And maybe the right type of a question is like, how does crossing these milestones hasn't changed you as a person?
I never had a plan. I've just gone from one thing to another. All these steps that I've taken have just been following my nose. I wasn't like trying to get somewhere. I had no aspiration. So as a result, like when we sell or reach these big milestones, it's maybe not as significant to me as I think it should be, because it wasn't something I dreamed of every day to go and achieve this or do that. I was just kind of like doing cool stuff that interested me. Sometimes I'd fall off that path and end up doing stuff that I was bored with or whatever. But like fundamentally, like I'm not just going from one thing to the other. And then as a result, these big milestones come and go a bit, which is probably not great. Like I probably should
celebrate them more.
Celebrate, but like, I don't know. It's like, I'm not sitting here thinking about anything other than like the new job I've signed up for, what I'm going to do. And if I wasn't, then I'd have to leave, because I can only really be obsessive about one thing at a time. Yeah, I don't know. I just go from one thing to another, for better or worse.
Seems like it's working.
It's working. It's all right. I did over the years, though, like I've got more confident in my instincts. Like in the sort of later stages of Space Ape, we haven't got a good post-mortem of it all. I think that's like probably years away. Like I can probably make some nice post-mortems of the middle stage and the start. The later stage is too raw. But like when we spoke, I was just coming from Pocket Gamer, where I like put on the sort of crushing it founder mask. But it was like, I knew we were done and I couldn't really like bring myself to action that. But yeah, in that moment, I was like, this is not going to work. We're not going to make something that's significant. And I probably should have done some things differently as a result of that insight, like either actioned it or, but like doing that was tough. Like you got to, don't want to be the guy who's negative. I couldn't leave and like let people down.
Of course not.
But that my lesson was like, actually, that was a problem. I should have figured out how to deal with that. And that really, in NextBeat, that was helpful, because I was the only one who really felt like it wasn't going to work. And I was seeing these things. And
then you had to come into the team and have the mask on. No, it's going to be all fine. I'm going to solve all these problems to keep on mounting.
So that would have been the default state. If I hadn't gone through maybe the previous company, I would have like, I can't let these people down. I've got to keep going. It's actually difficult to go and say, hey, friends of 10 years who've given me money, I've got to give it back, or you can't invest in me, because that's really hard, because I don't know whether it would have worked out differently if I just pushed on.
Yeah.
Because me deciding it wasn't going to work is kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. So I got more comfortable with those sorts of like, my gut's telling me this, I'm just going to go with it. And there's no point in burying that because I'm worried that you're going to be upset because I haven't followed through or whatever. So yeah, just definitely more confidence in the gut as a result.
Simon, I think you're a fascinating person. You've had a lot of success and you still don't wear it, if you will. I love your approach. And that's why I like to ask these, I think you've called the founder porn question, which is now what I'm going to call the series.
The entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, the journey question, but really it is voyeurish. But what I love about this is like everybody has a different approach. And there's no one prototype of a founder. You have to be like this, and this is the only way you can be successful. And what I love about your answers is that there's so many ways to succeed, as there are so many ways to fail. And you kind of like being yourself is one of the ways to succeed. Not thinking about alternative realities is your way of not second guessing. It's a good advice.
Cool. I'm glad I said something intelligent in the last hour and a half of this.
You're not into quantum physics.
No,
really. I think the second part is just the journey with apps. I think that is, as the market is becoming increasingly more competitive and there's increasingly more competition from Asian developers, especially Chinese, I think the app space is becoming, because it's somewhat uncharted, somewhat unoptimized compared to gaming, is more interesting, impactful for people who have been making games and who are not only about making games, but more about interactive media and perhaps entertainment through that. It's a viable solution. And it's also very interesting to see what you achieve and what kind of a path you carve for other game developers inside the app. So in that sense, you're like the first one in. Do not fail.
Yeah, okay.
Because that will prove my thesis wrong.
Yeah, you're only succeeding.
It's all about me.
All your predictions come true.
It's all about my predictions.
Yeah, your brand needs to be protected.
So you have to succeed, and we'll do everything to support that.
Yeah, cool. And I'm sure I should be plugging some stuff that I should be working on.
Duolingo, the best learning app in the business. The Owl is amazing. New courses coming in, expanding outside languages to learning chess, music.
And a lot of the things in there benefit from games DNA. Yeah, should be fun.
All right. Thanks everybody for listening. And
Oh,
we'll
goodness.
catch
I've
you
forgotten that
in the
people were
next
listening. You know?
episode.
Like, I couldn't have got through it otherwise.
You did it. You made it to the end of the episode. As a fan of the show, it would help us out if you'd subscribe and leave us a review on the podcast service of your choice. Those stars and likes, while a small action on your part, mean a lot to us and help to grow the show. More importantly, are you a member of the Deconstructor of Fun Slack group? If you have 5 years or more of games industry experience, go to deconstructoroffun.com/Slack and apply to join. Join the games industry best professional community filled with peers always willing to lend a hand, or subscribe to our newsletter to get all the latest insights from the Deconstructor of Fun content creators. Thanks for listening.